Have you ever stumbled upon an old cartoon and thought, wait, they actually aired this for kids? Back in the day, Filmation was the Saturday morning giant churning out shows that were colorful, campy, and sometimes downright bizarre. But through a modern lens, some of those innocent classics look a little different. From wild stereotypes to unfiltered weirdness, these cartoons would never make it past today's network standards. So buckle up, because the nostalgia trip you're about to take has some sharp corners. Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, 1972 to 1985. Once hailed as a revolution in children's programming, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids aimed to teach moral lessons through humor and relatable urban life. Every episode ended with a positive takeaway, and its lively animation felt groundbreaking for its time. But here's the twist: what made it so relatable then makes it complicated now. The show's central figure, Fat Albert, was surrounded by friends drawn with exaggerated traits that would raise eyebrows in modern animation circles. While the intent was wholesome, the execution sometimes leaned on broad stereotypes, reflecting a world seen through a limited cultural lens. Add to that the now controversial association with its creator, and the rerun potential dropped to near zero. Networks quietly shelved it, even though the show's message was far from harmful. It's a reminder of how quickly legacy can shift when times change. Despite that, fans still revisit the catchy "Hey, hey, hey" theme on YouTube, both nostalgic and uneasy at the same time. If Fat Albert aired today, it would probably come with a disclaimer, a documentary, and a serious debate about what kind of lessons we want kids to learn and who we trust to teach them. Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, 1976 to 1979. Filmation's Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle was a sincere attempt to honor Edgar Rice Burroughs' novels while infusing them with educational value. The animation was ambitious for its budget, and Tarzan's intelligence, not just his muscles, was often the focus. Yet the problem isn't Tarzan's jungle yell, it's what the jungle represented. In the 70s, Tarzan was still the ultimate colonial fantasy, a white hero ruling over a wild land, civilizing its people and animals alike. Filmation tried to modernize the idea, but many episodes still carried that old protector of the natives energy that today feels tone-deaf. Even the dialogue leaned into cliches about primitive tribes and lost civilizations waiting for rescue. By current standards, a network would take one look and say, "No way." The adventure is thrilling, the background's lush, but the cultural framing hasn't aged well. If it returned, it would need a complete rewrite to fit modern sensibilities. Still, it's a fascinating time capsule, a relic from when heroism was simple and no one questioned who got to be the hero. Watching Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle now is like peering through a window into a past version of Hollywood's imagination, bold, colorful, and totally unaware of its own blind spots. The Freedom Force, 1978. Before there was a cinematic universe, there was the Freedom Force. This short-lived Filmation series brought together heroes like Hercules Merlin and the Egyptian goddess Isis, yes, that name. Back then, the idea of mythological teamwork was pure Saturday morning magic. Today, it's a branding nightmare. The word Isis carries a completely different meaning now, one that has nothing to do with ancient Egypt or family-friendly adventure. Because of that, networks have quietly kept the show off schedules for years. But even beyond the name, the Freedom Force has another problem. It's a grab bag of mythological stereotypes, simplifying entire cultures into quick cartoon gimmicks. The animation was bright, the action fast, and the dialogue proudly melodramatic. It's a show that meant, well, trying to promote teamwork and courage through legendary figures. But the scripts often mashed together myths without much respect for their origins, turning sacred figures into punchline superheroes. Today, it's unlikely to air without heavy editing or a cultural consultant sitting in every writer's meeting. Still, for old-school fans, it remains a charming oddity from Filmation's creative peak. Watching it now feels like witnessing Saturday morning mythology in its most chaotic, glorious, and outdated form. The New Adventures of Zorro, 1981. When Filmation tackled Zorro, they aimed to combine swashbuckling excitement with Saturday morning flair, and they delivered. The masked hero, his black stallion tornado, and the familiar cry of Zorro thrilled young audiences across the world. But look closer, and you'll see why this one wouldn't air so easily today. The new Adventures of Zorro is soaked in old Hollywood tropes. The brave Spanish nobleman saving helpless villagers from cartoonish tyrants and bumbling banditos. The accents, the costumes, even the way side characters were drawn, everything screams of a time when cultural nuance wasn't exactly a priority. To its credit, the show tried to give Zorro a moral edge, often teaching lessons about justice and humility. Yet through a modern lens, the depiction of Mexican culture feels dated more costume party than authenticity. It's the kind of show that would probably get reimagined now, with actual cultural advisors and a deeper historical lens. Still, it remains visually striking. Those signature Filmation backgrounds with bold desert sunsets and hand-painted missions hold up beautifully. But on today's TV, Zorro would need more than a whip and wit. He'd need a sensitivity pass and a whole new supporting cast to meet the standards of modern storytelling. BraveStarr, 1987 to 1988. Now here's the wild one. BraveStarr Filmation's final big gamble, before the studio shut its doors. Imagine a space western where the hero is a Native American lawman with the strength of a bear and the eyes of a hawk. Sounds progressive, right? In many ways it was. But it also stumbled into the pitfalls of well-intentioned representation gone wrong. Marshal BraveStarr was portrayed as noble and wise, but his characterization leaned heavily on mystical clichés, the spirit guide voiceovers, the glowing animal powers, the solemn wisdom lines that made him feel more like a symbol than a person. Even though the creators meant to honor indigenous identity, it was filtered through the same old lens Hollywood used for decades. There's also the tone. Some episodes hit surprisingly heavy notes for a kids' show, including loss addiction and moral responsibility. Admirable but risky for modern children's blocks. Networks today would likely retool BraveStarr as a teen series or issue content warnings. Still, the animation remains gorgeous, the world-building ambitious, and the theme song an absolute anthem. It's a time capsule of late 80s optimism colliding with changing cultural awareness. If you watch it now, it's both ahead of its time and undeniably stuck in it. BraveStarr was Filmation's last ride into the sunset, a mix of courage, creativity, and contradictions. The kind of show that could only happen once. Filmation's Ghostbusters, 1986. Before anyone calls the lawyers, this isn't the one with Bill Murray. Filmation's Ghostbusters came first, built around two bumbling detectives and a talking gorilla chasing phantoms in a haunted future. It's pure 80s chaos. Neon lasers, puns flying faster than the ghosts, and a theme song that could make your morning coffee dance. But would it air today? Not without a few meetings with standards and practices. For starters, its ghost designs often leaned into exaggerated cultural looks. Some episodes accidentally turned folklore figures into punchlines. Add in the villain Prime Evil, a screeching skeleton overlord surrounded by bats and hooded minions, and you've got imagery that today's preschool channels might label too intense. Even the show's humor pushed boundaries for its time. The heroes Jake Kong and Eddie Spencer constantly bickered while their gorilla sidekick Tracy solved half the problems a slapstick formula kids loved, but networks now flag for aggressive tone. Still, the creativity was wild. Filmation built a full mythology time travel ghost worlds and gadgets powered by comedy logic. When Columbia Pictures launched The Real Ghostbusters, this one became The Other Ghostbusters, fading into cult status. Yet it holds a strange charm. An unfiltered imagination from an era when cartoons were allowed to be weird, loud, and fearless. Watch it now, and you'll find something today's polished animation rarely risks pure chaotic heart. Hero High, 1981. Welcome to Hero High, a place where teenage superheroes worry about grades, crushes, and controlling their powers before lunch. Part of the Kid Superpower Hour with Shazam. This Filmation experiment blended live-action sketches and animated chaos long before cross-media was cool. Every week, the students of Hero High, names like Captain California Punk Rock and Glorious Gal, fumbled through lessons on teamwork responsibility and teenage awkwardness. The energy? Off the charts. The tone? Somewhere between a comic book and a disco musical. But while the heart was in the right place, the humor hasn't aged so gracefully. Jokes about gender roles, nerds, and social stereotypes fill the hallways of Hero High. Characters are written in broad strokes: the jock, the ditz, the know-it-all. It's a time capsule of early 80s pop culture where cartoon schools looked like roller rinks, and everyone shouted their morals over funky guitar riffs. Today it would probably get a reboot with a diverse cast and modern slang, but the original? Too corny, too dated, and way too unfiltered for a kid's network. Still, you can't deny its spark. Hero High was Filmation's last attempt to merge superhero lessons with sitcom fun. Watching it now feels like flipping through an old yearbook, cringe catchy and kind of wonderful. The Kid Superpower Hour with Shazam, 1981. Before cinematic universes ruled the box office, Filmation had its own superhero mashup. The Kid Superpower Hour with Shazam was a bold hybrid half-live-action comedy, half-animated adventure featuring both DC's Captain Marvel and a class of teen heroes. It was messy, charming, and ambitious. But here's why you won't see it today. The tone is a roller coaster. The humor swings from goofy to borderline chaotic, and the scripts love moralizing speeches that sound like they were written during a power outage. The live-action host segments meant to teach kids about honesty and courage come off unintentionally campy now, like a Saturday morning version of an after-school special gone rogue. Then there's the superhero side. Shazam battles cartoonish villains in capes and leisure suits with fight sequences that feel more like dance numbers than danger. The moral lessons were genuine, but the execution was so over the top that it's nearly impossible to take seriously today. Still, it deserves credit for blending formats long before anyone else dared to. It's the kind of show you can't fully explain, you just have to experience it. Watching the Kid Superpower Hour with Shazam in 2025 feels like discovering a lost VHS that somehow survived the neon decade, a relic too sincere for its own good and too bizarre to forget. Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1967. Filmation's Journey to the Center of the Earth took Jules Verne's adventure classic and turned it into a weekly trek through glowing caves and underground monsters. The premise was exciting. Professor Lindenbrook and his companions search for a path to Earth's core while battling the villainous Count Saknussemm. The animation was moody, the tone surprisingly serious for kids, and the voice work, especially Ted Knight, was first-rate. So why wouldn't it air now? Because it's a museum piece from a time when adventure meant stereotypes and strange science. The underground civilizations are drawn as primitive societies, waiting to be understood by the explorers. There's also a constant tone of superiority that modern storytelling would instantly challenge. The heroes always teach, while the others learn. And that imbalance hasn't aged gracefully. Add in the low-lit visuals, suspenseful music, and occasional moments that might scare very young viewers, and you've got a show that's too dark and too dated for modern Saturday mornings. Yet its ambition is undeniable. Filmation tried to bring a sense of danger and wonder that went far beyond the usual slapstick cartoons. Today it stands as proof that even limited animation could dream big, just not without its flaws. Journey to the Center of the Earth is fascinating, flawed and unmistakably Filmation. Brave enough to dig deep, but not quite ready for the light above. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, 1970. Before Melissa Joan Hart ever waved a wand, there was Filmation's Sabrina the Teenage Witch, a spin-off of The Archie Show that cast the teenage sorceress as a groovy high schooler juggling magic and homework. The result? Pure bubblegum fun with a supernatural twist. But for modern networks, this early version of Sabrina would raise more than a few eyebrows. The show constantly leaned into witchcraft as comedy, complete with green smoke, bubbling cauldrons, and pointy hats galore. Back then, it was harmless fun. Today, networks tend to tread carefully with mystical themes in kids' animation, especially when spells are used casually or for pranks. There's also the gender angle. Sabrina's biggest struggles often revolve around impressing boys or hiding her powers to appear normal. In 2025, that would feel way too outdated. Yet for all its cliches, it's impossible not to smile at its charm. The animation is pop art perfection with candy colors, jazzy music, and narration that sounds straight out of a drive-in commercial. If it aired today, Sabrina would probably get a clever reboot about empowerment and identity, but this version remains a cheerful time capsule. Sweet, silly, and totally 70s. Watching it now feels like opening a box of vintage cereal and finding a spellbook inside pure nostalgia with a little extra sparkle. The Hardy Boys, 1969. When Filmation adapted the Hardy Boys into an animated mystery band, it was a groovy attempt to modernize the classic teenage sleuths. Frank and Joe Hardy weren't just solving crimes anymore, they were rocking out on stage between adventures. Picture Scooby-Doo meets the Monkees with matching outfits and psychedelic transitions. The show had energy-catchy songs and the wholesome charm of a late 60s Saturday morning. But through today's lens, it's a perfect storm of what networks avoid. Cultural stereotypes, tone-deaf comedy, and a complete disregard for narrative realism. Villains often had foreign accents played for laughs, and entire episodes leaned on caricatures that feel awkward now. Beyond that, the show's mystery plots are featherlight, sometimes resolved by sheer luck rather than clue-solving. Modern audiences used to complex storytelling would laugh out loud at how conveniently every case wraps up. Still, there's a certain innocence in its naivety, a world where danger never feels dangerous and every chase ends with a song. It's charming, but undeniably dated. Today, the Hardy Boys would be reimagined as a slick streaming thriller with smartphones and suspense. But the Filmation version remains a tie-dyed postcard from an era when detectives wore bell-bottoms and everyone danced their way out of trouble. It wouldn't air unaltered today, but it sure would make a great retro playlist. Space Sentinels, 1977. If you've never seen Space Sentinels, imagine a cosmic team-up between mythological heroes Hercules Mercury and Astrea, protecting Earth from galactic evil. It's one of Filmation's most visually ambitious shows, packed with glowing beams, deep space battles, and a surprisingly progressive lineup for its time. The cast included a woman leader and diverse heroes, which was rare in the 70s. But here's the paradox. It's both ahead of its time and trapped by it. The diversity is admirable, yet the portrayals rely on broad, sometimes awkward writing. The dialogue can veer into, "We're different, but we can all get along" speeches that feel clunky today. The show also blends mythologies from multiple cultures into a single narrative soup, flattening centuries of stories into cartoon one-liners. The animation was Filmation's signature mix, stiff but ambitious. Every character moved like they were underwater, but the art direction tried hard to look epic. Episodes tackled big ideas, cosmic order, balance, destiny, but the delivery was pure Saturday morning melodrama. Would it air today? Maybe as a reboot with a writer's room full of mythologists. But the original, with its heroic earnestness and jumbled storytelling, feels too dated for modern kids' programming. Still, its heart was in the right place. Space Sentinels stands as a well-meaning misfire, cheesy, colorful, and fascinatingly sincere about saving the universe one speech at a time. Superstretch and Microwoman, 1978. Before modern superhero couples, there was Superstretch and Microwoman, a groundbreaking Filmation segment about a husband and wife team with elastic and size-changing powers. It aired as part of Tarzan and the Super 7, delivering 5-minute bursts of action, affection, and humor. At the time, it was quietly revolutionary, a black superhero duo leading their own animated stories. But despite its positive intent, it wouldn't hit screens the same way today. For one, the writing leaned heavily into domestic cliches. The couple's teamwork was often framed like a sitcom marriage full of honey you go first jokes that make the heroism feel secondary. It was progressive in casting. but traditional in tone. Some episodes also fell into the trap of making side villains exaggerated caricatures. Nothing malicious, just the product of a studio trying to do diversity without really knowing how. Still, the chemistry between the leads made it special. They were funny, supportive, and refreshingly human compared to other stiff Saturday morning heroes. Modern viewers might cringe at some of the dated slang or simplified dialogue, but the charm is undeniable. Superstretch and Microwoman deserves credit for breaking ground. It just wouldn't pass today's sensitivity standards without a full creative makeover. In its heart, though, it's still one of Filmation's most optimistic shows, proof that even flawed first steps can matter. Webwoman, 1978. Long before anyone swung through skyscrapers in spandex, Filmation created Webwoman, a female superhero who gained powers from alien technology and used them to fight injustice. Her costume, her name, even her web-themed gadgets, all suspiciously similar to another well-known hero from a certain comic company. Let's just say, legal lightning was in the air. The show's concept was bold. A former NASA scientist turned eco-heroine protecting Earth with compassion and intellect. The problem? It aired in an era when female leads were rare, so the writers constantly undercut her authority with exaggerated femininity, makeup gags, fashion jokes, and endless reminders that she was graceful but strong. On top of that, the spider motif caused headaches for broadcasters worried about brand confusion. Once Spider-Woman launched over at Marvel Web, Woman vanished faster than a morning mist. Today, it's a collector's curiosity, fun, empowering, and frustratingly unfinished. Would it air now? Possibly, but not as it was. Modern standards would tear through its gender cliches, its slow pacing, and those accidental copyright echoes. Still, it's an important footnote in animation history, a pioneer overshadowed by legal tangles and cultural timing. Webwoman crawled so others could soar. The New Adventures of the Lone Ranger, 1980 to 1982. Filmation revived the Lone Ranger with heroic flair, bright colors, galloping hooves, and booming morals about justice. It was pure Americana on a Saturday morning. But while the stories were filled with action and integrity, there was one major issue that guarantees it wouldn't air unedited today: the portrayal of Tonto. The native companion was meant to be loyal and brave, yet he was written with a flattened accent and minimal dialogue. The intent wasn't cruel, but the execution feels painfully outdated. Modern viewers see the imbalance instantly. The white hero leads every charge, while Tonto follows in silence or nods in agreement. To its credit, the show avoided mockery or parody, treating both characters with respect within its limits. But representation has evolved, and this version simply doesn't fit the progress television has made. Even the title, focused entirely on one man, feels like an artifact from a different storytelling era. Still, the animation itself is beautiful, with sweeping desert vistas and that unforgettable theme music echoing through dusty canyons. The Lone Ranger remains a nostalgic gem, but a relic all the same. A reminder that good intentions aren't enough if the perspective stays one-sided. Today it would air only with a disclaimer, if at all. So there you have it, 16 Filmation cartoons that could never fly under today's radar. Some are innocent relics, others well-intentioned misfires, but all are snapshots of a creative era that didn't play it safe. Watching them now is like flipping through a vintage comic book, bright, clumsy, and fascinating. Which one shocked you most? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and keep your nostalgia tuned, because the past still has stories to tell.